Hello and welcome to Reunited States, a podcast where we come together to discuss that which pushes us apart in hopes of finding a path to bringing us back to consensus and rational discourse. We are recording this episode on Wednesday, September 11th, the morning following the first presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Before we jump on, I'd like to take a moment on this 23rd anniversary of 9/11 to honor and pay our respects to the individuals who lost their lives in the awful terrorist attack that reshaped our country forevermore. And with that, out of Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig, civil servant, political junkie, and guy that had a terrible first week of fantasy football. And to my right is...
I'm Jesse Saywell. I am a professor, a political strategist, and the former host of Rational Discourse Politics on Facebook during the 2020 election. I'm coming to you from Manchester, New Hampshire, which is just about as far away as you can get from Los Angeles, my old home in the continental United States. But that's part of what makes this opportunity so special. Tyler and I are longtime friends who want to share our insights into identifying the issues that divide us as a nation and share our perspectives on how to bridge those divides, political and otherwise, in a common sense, reasonable way. You know, we want to get beyond the noise of polarization and share the respectful conversations that we have on a regular basis, with the goal of hopefully inspiring you, our listeners, to start building bridges with the people in your lives that you might not entirely agree with, and recognizing that there really is so much more that unites us as human beings than divides us. I know it's an overused cliche. You heard it in the debate last night about 20 times, but there really is a lot of truth to it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, let's get into the main topic for the afternoon. That, of course, will be the debates. Surprise, surprise. It's the forefront of everyone's feeds, I'm sure, right now. So, of course, we have to sink our teeth into this. So, Jesse, some overall thoughts. I think it's pretty clear we had some winners and we had some pretty bigliest losers. Trump did not have a particularly strong night last night. He allowed himself to be baited. He allowed himself to go off the rails quite a bit throughout the debates. Give me your thoughts.
I mean, you and I talked about this ahead of time, and I was expecting him to be triggered. I was expecting him to go off on tangents about things. But this was a new level of unhinged for Trump, even for Trump. I think back to the first debate, and it feels like so long ago, but the first debate with Joe Biden, I also loved how you introduced this as the second first debate of this cycle. But I'm thinking about the first debate in 2020, in which Trump just went off the rails against Biden. That was really the reason why the Harris campaign desperately wanted now to have these mics unmuted, because it showed so poorly on Trump when he could not, and he didn't have the discipline to stop interrupting Biden. And it really, I think that was a critical kind of moment for the country to see the then sitting president really be unhinged. It was shocking to see him last night really go off, and how far he went off the deep end on some of these conspiracy theories, some of these blatant lies that he said. We have to talk about the dogs, the eating of the pets. I mean, when she baited him she triggered him, and this was a discussion about immigration and the border, which should be his bread and butter. It's a critical issue to people, and it should be, quite frankly. Like, I think a lot of times on the left we sit there and we say, oh, any discussion about the border is racist and whatnot, and because a lot of the rhetoric we hear is inherently racist about it. But the subject itself is a legitimate concern that people have. But Trump can't communicate about it in a way that's actually bringing in any logical people. And for him to just go off on this ridiculous conspiracy theory about dogs, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating They're eating the pets. I mean, it was ridiculous.
He couldn't even let it down when the moderator told him it was false. He said, well, I knew somebody. He said they took my dog.
He was like, we'll find out. We'll find out what? Like, we'll talk about the moderators, because I do want to have a little bit of a discussion about that. But I felt like this was a disaster for him. And do I think it's going to move the needle? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure whether it'll move it much, but it certainly didn't help him. Nothing that happened last night helped him whatsoever.
So on the topic of performance and I guess the unexpected bad performance by Mr. Trump, as a strategist, what do you feel like the campaign strategy was for each candidate going into this debate? What, in your opinion, were they intending to do going into this debate, and how do you feel they either followed or, more than likely in Trump's case, failed to follow the plan?
Well, I think Kamala Harris had two strategies. One is, I have to come in with these substantive answers, and I don't think she did a great job on that front. I don't think she came in and really made people feel more confident in her policy proposals, because again, they are just so broad, and again, it is the difficult thing is, if you go too much into policies, which is certainly what Biden tried to do several months ago, and he just couldn't articulate them, but if you go too much in that direction, then people are like, oh, they're so boring, and they tune out and they're not listening. But if you don't give enough, then people are like, wow, they didn't give enough details. So it is that sweet spot. She has not figured it out yet. But the thing that she did really well, and what really set Trump off, because if you ask me, 15 minutes into the debate or 10 minutes into the debate, Trump was winning. I think Kamala's first answer, she refused to answer or even acknowledge inflation. I mean, she's kind of just dodging around those questions, and she seemed really nervous to me at the beginning. But the minute that she had that opening to talk about the rallies and to bait him, I mean, that's what set him off, and she knew that, and they definitely told her, okay, bait him with talking about the rallies, talk about his crowds leaving, talk about, and from there she just kept piling on, one dunk after another on top of him, that really set him off. Now, on the flip side, Donald Trump, if I was Donald Trump's campaign advisor, give me a break, but if I was Donald Trump's political strategist, I mean, I would have been saying, look, just keep going back to the question of why haven't you done it yet? You want to do all these things, Kamala. Why haven't you done them yet? You're vice president. Just attach her to Joe Biden, and he just couldn't. He got so mad and so triggered by her presence, by the things that she was saying, that he went off the rails. And the moment he went off the rails on the issue of the crowds, on the issue of the dogs, on the issue of everything that he just could not control himself on the issue of her race, he couldn't get himself back onto the tracks again. He was too mad. His blood was too hot. There was no way of cooling him down. So he failed epically. I mean, on every single issue that he should have had a strong suit, there was nothing that he really came out the victor, because even the things that she didn't do well on, the policies that she still hasn't quite answered or made people feel comfortable on, he said something so ridiculous in response that's the only thing people were hearing. And it was incoherent babbling from him so much of the time. I don't think that if Trump was a relatively controlled candidate last night, I think that we might be having a different discussion if he had been able to stick to a few set talking points and just keep putting her on the defensive. But he allowed Kamala to take offense to him, and he played on the defensive the entire time. And as we saw in 2020, Donald Trump does not do well when he's on defense. He wants to be on offense. That's where he was earlier this year on Joe Biden, and he destroyed him. And now he feels like he's on defense again. And he also just looked old. I mean, he really did look so much older than he has in the past. He seemed like the cranky, angry uncle screaming at the TV. And it progressively got worse as the debate went on. So those were my takes. I think that Kamala was probably about 70% in terms of the things that they wanted her to say, or the things that would maybe move the needle. I think she gets maybe a 70-80% there, which is a pretty good score in a debate. I think she did very well. It wasn't perfect, but the only thing people are going to remember from this debate was Trump being completely and utterly unhinged.
I think it's kind of funny that he, during the debate, brings up the Springfield dog eating, and I said a big quotes thing, while he does in fact look and sound like Grandpa Simpson, yelling at literal crowds.
Yes!
Clouds.
Yes. Where is it? I mean, it was just insane. And
nobody listens to me.
Nobody is, and they tell you you bring your dog home, and all of a sudden the dog is gone. I just it's nuts. And to be honest, as funny as it is, and I was laughing, and I think a lot of people were laughing at it, it's really disturbing, because anyone who feels, even after last night, like Donald Trump cannot be president of the United States, or could not be elected in November, I should say, is kidding themselves. They're living in a fantasy land. He can still win. There is a very clear path to him becoming the next president, and it's just deeply disturbing to me to see that be the case. And it's very sad to see that one of the two choices we have for the next president is not living in reality. Really doesn't feel like he's living in reality, more so than in the past. This was different. Trump has always been vile. He's always been, he said incendiary things. He said things that created controversy. He said offensive things. This was different. Something about him has changed. There may be some level of mental health that we've spent so much time talking about Biden that we haven't spent nearly as much time addressing the fact that Trump may have some sort of age-related mental health crisis, on top of, his blatant narcissism. But anyway, so I want to ask you, though, the one part that was really interesting to me, how did you feel about Kamala choosing to answer or respond to Trump's comments about her race? She didn't do that in the Dana Bash interview. She deflected. I think both of us at the time felt like that was a strong deflection. But I'm interested in your thoughts on why she chose to do it in the debate and whether it was effective.
I wasn't expecting her to do it, because I was expecting her to give an answer just like she gave Dana Bash, like a very one-word, zinger of an answer as a way to shut down, what would be considered an irrelevant question, right? An irrelevant prod into something that has something to do with her qualifications as president. However, in hindsight, seeing how she reacted, I'm very, very happy that she did. And I'm very happy that she did the way that she did. Something that we discussed outside of this has been that, we had this concern over, her ability to appear like an everyday person, right? That she was going to have to struggle with being identified as an elitist versus your common, everyday, wife and mother and colleague. And I was really looking for a moment in the debate where she would have the opportunity to do that. I think a lot of people were looking at the abortion topic to be that moment. I think this was that moment, because when she was given the chance to respond, I feel like, unlike the rest of her responses, outside of maybe the very first response, she was very strong and she knew exactly what she was going to say. And she didn't feel that way when she responded to the race questions. I feel like she felt as though she was almost taken aback, and she hesitated to give the response that directly related to her racial identity, but I think that worked in her favor, because she responded in a way that was very real. Because I feel like anybody that was challenged on their racial identity would likely respond similarly, right? Be kind of taken aback by it, give a response that felt a lot more organic as opposed to scripted and planned. And so the way she responded, I felt, was very smart. Whether or not it was intentional, I felt like it was extremely grounded. I felt like it was very unscripted and very real and raw from her heart. And I think it was in a very effective way of taking that attack and using it to paint herself as not a prosecutor, not a politician, but someone who is merely the subject of a racially derogatory remark.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think that I was nervous when she started to respond. I was getting a little nervous because the concern, and it's not a fair concern whatsoever, but from a political strategy perspective, it is something to be conscious of, and she is clearly very conscious of it. She cannot look like angry black woman. Like that's a terrible thing that she should even have to be conscious of that, because she is a woman of color and she is allowed to be angry sometimes. Human beings are angry. I mean, Trump screamed screamed at the moderators and into our living rooms last night for like an hour and a half. Kamala could never get away with doing that. And the way that she turned it around and talked about Trump's behavior relating to other things. It wasn't relating to me. It wasn't her being like, I feel, like you're attacking me. It was women feel attacked by you. People of color across this country feel attacked by you, and here's why, and all the things. And then Trump's reaction was like, you're bringing up things from 40, 50 years ago because now there's nothing. Yeah, okay, there is something. There is plenty. Charlottesville was not that long ago, sir. Your comments literally immediately prior to what she just said were terribly, horrifically insensitive and racist.
Mm-hmm. He really dropped the ball in deciding to go with I don't care, whatever, I don't know, I don't care. He said about 5-7 times in response to the moderator's question, which I felt was terrible. Like, I understand he was trying to say that he doesn't care about race, like that's what he's trying to say, but it definitely sounded to me and to probably most people watching, I hope, that he doesn't care about her, or he doesn't care about the attack.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't care about making the attack. And I felt it was a huge opportunity for him to maybe say something like, oh, race doesn't matter, but instead it came out like, well, I don't care about making those attacks. Yeah. I can say whatever I want.
And you mentioned the moderators. That's something that I wanted to bring up. Because I'm curious to your thoughts on this as well. I don't think the moderators, I know that as somebody who identifies as a liberal, left of center certainly, and wants Kamala to do well and sees Trump as an existential threat to humanity, much less just the country itself. I was excited to see some of the moderators, really pushing back on his claims, anything from the dogs to trying to force him to make a decision on whether he would sign or veto a national abortion ban, all of this. Correcting him on false statements left and right about, economic proposals, etc. But once you get past I really liked seeing him get fact-checked in real time, I think politically they didn't do Kamala any favors there, and that's not their job, obviously. But the only narrative that exists right now is it was 3-on-1. The moderators were after Trump. That's the right-wing Fox News talking point right now, is that the moderators set Trump up to lose. And there will be a significant portion of the population that will buy into that, because they will say, wow, they were a lot harder on him than they were on Kamala. Now, the reality is he lied. By CNN fact check, he lied 33 times blatant lies versus Kamala's 1 in the course of the debate. So, of course, they had to be more stringent there. But if you look back at the CNN debate, the first debate with Joe Biden, CNN got a lot of flack and a lot of heat from progressives for not calling out Trump for his lies. That's not their job. It's not the moderator's job to call out the other candidate's lies. It is the candidate's job, the other candidate's job, to correct and do that. And Joe Biden was completely incapable of doing so, and that's why that debate went so badly. But I think that, they asked solid questions, but I do think that they could have toned down because they really, really began to look partisan in certain moments of the debate, and that's not going to help kind of us trying to find, rational, reasonable discussion in the middle, common ground about what happened. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
I agree and I disagree, I think, on a bit of what you're saying here. I agree that there was a level of partisanship, but I don't think the fact-checking was the issue in that regard. I think they asked Trump harder questions. I think they attacked him with questions more than they attacked Kamala with questions. Like, they asked them both good questions. Like, they asked Kamala about her record. They asked Kamala about the economy in the beginning, which is fine. I mean, that's like the least you should be asking them, in terms of difficult questions that she needs to answer. But they asked Trump, like, a ton of tough questions. They asked him about January 6th. They asked him about abortion. They asked him about comments that he's made previously on Twitter or X and other social media platforms. I felt like they were grilling Trump more on the things that he has said, and granted he has said more than Kamala that has been contentious. I understand that and I recognize that, but I felt like he was put more on the spot with certain questions that were directly about things he said, not about a policy or what do you think about this world event. It was like, hey, you said something. Why'd you say that? Do you regret? Like, I thought the Jan 6 question, while it is important that he talks about it, it was a very strangely worded question. I felt asking him, do you regret something? Like, what do you think he's going to say to that? Mm-hmm. And what do you hope to get out of a question? What do you hope to get out of an answer to do you regret? Because I didn't feel like it was really gonna. There's things you could ask.
That's a loaded question.
Right. There's things you could ask about Jan 6, but that's not the thing to ask about Jan 6. So I felt like there were a lot of attempts to get him to go back on things and to catch him in some of the vile things he said in the past more than her. And the worst thing they asked her was like, "Hey, you flip-flopped before. Can you respond to that?" Or, "Hey, the economy, people aren't happy with the economy. Can you respond to that?" That being, now that's one thing, and I think that's where the moderators were probably a bit more partisan. But I actually think that the fact-checking was right to do. I agree, and I understand that, like, the fact-checking should be something that the opponent should be doing for the American people. But at the end of the day, we have learned in the past 4+ years that fake news, in particular the lies that are spread by Donald Trump mainly, have led to a lot of violence in this country. It has led to death in this country. It has led to extreme partisanship that we may never recover from in this country. And I think we've come to a point where we need to, if there's an opportunity to address any level of quote-unquote fake news, any sort of lie, conspiracy, we should be doing it. Whether it's the moderators or anybody else, I'm glad that they fact-checked the dog thing, because she probably would have laughed it off and said, "He's crazy." That's not a fact check. That's just, that's a comment. I mean, she did say that. She said, look at this, craziness. The fact that there was a very clear and concise answer that, told him this was not true is better for the American people to hear it that way, because that's the truth. And it's better to come from a quote unquote unpartisan, mediator, a referee, if you will, being the moderators, as opposed to the opponent, which has a vested interest to tell him that he's lying. And you if you don't know anything about politics, like some of us who do these podcasts and listen to these podcasts do, you're just going to think, oh, well, that person's just saying what they want to say to win points or whatever. So I'm actually really happy with the fact checking. I think it's really important because of the problems that we've had with a lot of these conspiracies and lies, running rampant and continuing to run rampant. The big lie being the biggest one, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents on the moderators. I think there are issues, but I also think that some of the choices they made were in the best for America and for the American people. So
I think,
yeah,
I think that's fair. I don't entirely agree with that, but I do think that that's fair, and I think you make a good point about the flow of disinformation that continues to happen, and having somebody there to be like, can you let him just continue to spew out things that are patently false and dangerous. The one issue that really comes to mind to me is the moment, the Jan 6 moment, when we're really talking about the previous election, and Trump said, oh, well, it was sarcasm or whatever, and the moderator, basically responds with, well, I didn't sense the sarcasm. When I read that. That feels very, very judgmental, and I agree. Of course, it wasn't a sarcastic comment. Like, and we all, anyone who listens to it understands that that he did at some point acknowledge that he lost. But even if it was a mistake, right? But it is subjective, and to insert that there, you're inserting your perspective on something into the debate, and that's not what should be happening. And that opens a door. I just think they opened a door now where, again, certain factions of the country are going to be able to make an argument. I don't think it's correct, but they're going to be able to make an argument that this whole debate was a setup. It was an ambush on Trump, and that Trump got ambushed in it, and the reason and that he fought so hard was that he had to fight his way out of this 3-on-1. And
on Fox News, he was already he called in already saying that he believed that Kamala was fed the answers. Prior to the debate, he was already spreading all kinds of nonsense, defending himself and his terrible debate performance last night. But you can already see like the threads of those conspiracies already latching themselves onto Fox News and other media sources as well.
Absolutely. So, Tyler, share with me, what was your favorite moment of the debate? I know there were a lot of, and favorite is a subjective term, but there were a lot of things to choose from in this wild debate that went on. Did you have a moment that was your personal favorite?
I don't know if it's sad or hilarious that there are just so many to choose from in a debate intended to be a serious discussion about policy and who deserves to be, president of the United States. But, that being said, I definitely have a few favorites, but I think the top of my list has to be what I'm calling Kamala's TV-friendly swear. During one of her responses in which she was targeting the former President Trump for inviting the Taliban to Camp David, she turns to him and addresses him as this former president. And the way she enunciated and delivered that line, to me, is perfect. Everyone who heard that knew that she really had other words in mind. She much rather would have preferred to call him, you motherfucker, you fucking blah blah blah. And of course she can't, she shouldn't. It's national television, something that is intended to be watchable by families. But she gets the point across in a way that I think is a little appropriate. And yet everyone knew exactly what she was thinking about. And I think it's perfect. It's perfect line delivery. It made me laugh for hours thinking about it afterwards. But what about you? What was your favorite moment in the debate?
Oh, man. I think it's hard to say a favorite part. I will say that the thing that amused me the most was Trump's concepts of a plan on healthcare, where, this has been going on for almost a decade now. Like, how long can this go on where he keeps telling us that he's going to have a plan? Last night was the first time I've ever heard him say that he saved Obamacare. That was interesting. But But yeah, I thought that whole interaction about healthcare with Kamala, reenacting the thumbs down from John McCain, which saved Obamacare. People forget. You want to talk about who saved Obamacare? John McCain, a Republican, saved Obamacare when it could have been repealed with no replacement, what they called the skinny repeal at the time. But he, basically on his deathbed, came back to the Senate in the middle of the night, gave the thumbs down, and saved Obamacare largely as a way, while he was putting his thumb down, he was putting a different finger up towards Donald Trump, because he was sick of him and because he recognized that they had no plan to replace it whatsoever, and they have never had a plan. And so it was a great political football for a long time that we never hear anymore. The repeal and replace Obamacare. There's never been, now that they failed at doing it, and it's super popular now. There's never a moment where you hear that regularly anymore. So now he's changed his tune to I saved it, and I have concepts of a plan, but I'm not president yet. So that was ridiculous. Honestly, I would have really liked to have seen Kamala use the concepts of a plan thing later and just be like, and we have plans. If you want to go to my website, you can look at my plans, and they are not concepts of plans. I thought that was a really easy setup for her, and I kept waiting for it to come out. And I think she had been coached so much to not go off script, to not let Trump drive her off script, that she didn't want to risk it. And that's fair, but I think it would have been a very, very home run moment to reference that, because it's such a ridiculous thing to say.
You said it better than I think anyone could. Again, this debate was full of priceless moments. I think everything from Trump saying he'll fix the wars before he's president, to talking about how his former aides can write books about him. Gee, I wonder why they can write books about him. Maybe because of how terrible he is and his administration has been, and how they can't do the same thing about Biden because, there's not as many bad things about him. But great responses all around. I think that puts a cap on our debate review for this first presidential debate, and hopefully we have a few more that we'll be able to listen to and enjoy later on in the election cycle. But I'd like to turn.
Yeah, I don't see them doing any more debates.
You don't think so?
We're moving into. No, I think the debates are done. I think Trump came out today. He basically said he kind of insinuated he's not going to debate. I see no motivation on Kamala's behalf to want to debate him again. She just trounced him. What more can the people hear after last night? What more do we possibly need to hear? Who's going to be swayed?
Well, we still get to see Wells and JD, so.
That is true, and that's exciting in and of itself.
We'll get that one. We'll have more football jokes there, for sure.
Definitely.
So let's move on to things we can all agree on. This is a segment of our pod where we like to discuss a few things, political or definitely otherwise, that we believe everyone and anyone can wholly agree on, whether it's positive or negative. And I'll start. Things that we can all agree on. I'm going to go with the very particular strawberry hard candies that you can only find at Grandma's house. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you definitely do know what I'm talking about. They are these little red strawberry flavored hard candies, and they're wrapped in this very iconic strawberry looking wrap. And I don't think anyone on earth can tell me what brand they are, where to buy them, where they come from or where they go, other than I can find them at my grandma's house, at my aunt's house, and that when we go there, we love them. And I think it's something that we've all probably experienced at least once, especially those of us who are somewhere in the Gen Z to millennial age group. And it's something I think we all love, and we've all loved to experience when hopping over the grandma's for the weekend.
I mean, you gotta love strawberry candy in the first place. Like, strawberry anything, I love it. Strawberry soda, strawberry ice cream, all of it. Like, it's delicious. But yeah, this is such a great point you make. Where do those come from? Like, they're not branded. There's no label. It's just these random things. I've seen them in various places. I have no idea where they come from. My grandmother was more of a butterscotch lady herself. But yes, they do remind me of like an older generation, just I have no idea where they come from and what brand they are, and it doesn't matter because they're delicious.
And we know where to get them. Grandma's house.
Apparently, yes. Unfortunately, no grandma left on my end, so I guess my time with strawberry candies has come to a close, so sadly. But well, I'm already getting there. So speaking of which, I'm gonna give some grandpa energy here, or grandma energy, one of the two, and talk about something we can all agree on, which is that two-factor authentication is the stupidest thing, and it is the most annoying thing, and it's ruining our country. It's destroying our country. We all know it. We're not going to have a country anymore if we keep this up. In all seriousness, I thought technology was supposed to make life easier. I hate it. All of a sudden, every time I log into my accounts at work, I have to have something sent to my other device. I have to then, type in a freaking code, or I have to, whatever. I have to have an app just to log into things. There has to be an easier way to protect us. I get there's so many threats and cybersecurity issues, but there has to be a better way. Technology has to find a better way in 2024 than making us use two separate devices just to log in to your fucking emails. So, that's where I am. I'm done, and I think most people would agree. Two-factor authentication sucks. Yes, maybe I am a cranky old man, but
now it feels like
that's
you're
where
being
I'm
Grandpa
at.
Simpson.
I can't figure it out. We keep looking for it, and then it goes to the phone, and yeah, that's me. It is.
Well, I can't help but agree with you. I use two-factor authentication for everything at work as well. And as much as it is for digital security, it definitely is more of a pain in the butt than it feels like it's worth. And I don't think anyone enjoys having to whip out their phone, just like download a code or copy and paste a code onto their computer.
It's worse than passwords. Like, it's worse than trying to remember my password, and I can't remember anything anymore. But anyway, well, I think that wraps up our show here. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you found it insightful. And the challenge that we would give to you is talk to your family members, your friends, and treat them with respect. Don't try and talk down to them. Don't try and talk over to them. Let's bring people in and have the discussions. Anywhere that you see an opening where you can find common ground and cede something, concede something to someone else to show that you are willing to give, then that's, even if they don't reciprocate in the moment, it's good for the country. It's good for our society. We have to stop hating each other. We have to stop treating other Americans as if they are actually others. And so that's our challenge. And we certainly hope that we can. That we can begin to the process of healing the country as we go forward by doing this. But with that, on behalf of Tyler Ehrig in Los Angeles, I'm Jesse Saywell in Manchester, New Hampshire, and this has been Reunited States. Until next time.